Conversations with Malik podcast show, coming to you from New York. We're glad to have you and thank you all who are listening or watching this show. This podcast is about the stories of transformation of regular people during the basic struggle and pain of life. Everyone has a testimony. We all have survived the darkness. Now let's talk about how we got to the light so we can help our brothers and sisters who still haven't overcome their demons. But guess what? I told you. We all have devils on different levels. So through conversations, we use the tools of insight to light the path of hope. Let's have a chat and stop running from our issues. If we live through it, then talking about it probably won't kill us. That's what we're doing. Talking, crying, looking inward so we can grow outward is the theme of this show. That's right. The caterpillar transforming into the butterfly is the goal and purpose of this podcast. When you talk about you, I learn about me. Iron sharp as iron,
steel sharp as steel.
So we can cut through the fog of despair into the hope of today.
Everyone have a testimony. We all have survived.
Welcome to Conversations with Malik, and please, before I start today's show, please follow us at convoswithmalik.com, convoswithmalik.com. We on Apple iTunes, Facebook page Conversations with Malik, Instagram Con W Malik. You know, listen, like us, subscribe, share us. We really need your support. And if you like messages like this, that's about positivity, that's about inspiration through providing information, share us with somebody, tell a friend, like us, and subscribe so that you can get all of the latest shows. And listen, so we have a great show today, and we have some historic events going on in the country right now. I'm here with my friend Lawrence Bartley. How you doing, Lawrence?
I'm good, Malik. I'm good. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, listen, and this is my dear friend, my childhood friend, and he's doing some great and wonderful things. He's communications associate of the Marshall Project, and the Marshall Project is doing some wonderful things. And so we're going to talk to him about criminal justice reform. That's what we're talking about. I heard it yesterday that they were looking to pass a bill about criminal justice reform. It's been on the horizons, ever since, Russell Simmons and all of them were out there, and they were really, about all of the RICO laws and people getting over sentenced and all of these mandatory minimums and all of this stuff. Children being sentenced as teens and sentenced as adults. So we know there's been, injustice in the criminal justice system. And when I heard that Jared Kushner was really behind this, pushing for it, I was a little skeptical, I'll be honest. But you never know. Good could come from anywhere, and I don't know Jared personally. And so when I heard that it was really picking up steam, I said, wow, it looks like this thing might actually really happen. And then, yesterday, I heard the news that it was going that way and that they had bipartisan agreement. And then today it went through. Of course, there's some more steps, but it's really looking good. It's looking like the key people that are in place, that the votes are there, and the key people are behind it on both sides of the aisle, man. So this is looking promising, and so we're going to get into it a little more with Lawrence Bartley. But Lawrence, I got a question for you. So the Marshall Project, tell me a little bit about what the Marshall Project is about.
Well, the Marshall Project is a non-profit, non-partisan news organization that seeks to instill a sense of urgency regarding the U.S. criminal justice system. That's what we cover. And we do a lot of good work. Mm-hmm. As an example of some of our impact, we wrote a story about inside of Tennessee. They have the county jails. Individuals who are incarcerated who haven't yet been convicted or probably won't get convicted. I don't want to put that on them of a crime. They're sitting there waiting for their day in court to have trial. Mm-hmm. But if those facilities were overcrowded, there was a law on the books that said that those institutions can send them to facilities where they can be in special housing units, which is solitary confinement, locked down for 23 hours a day and only out for one.
Wow.
And that's unfair to do. Like, some people thought it was unfair to do. So the Marshall Project reported this, and the governor of Tennessee saw it and was like, wow, I didn't even know this was on the books.
Wow.
So he changed the law, and as a result, that's not happening in Tennessee anymore.
Wow. Just as a result of information, like what we're doing here. And so there was something going on in his own state that he didn't really know about, because obviously there's a lot going on.
Definitely.
Wow, so that's powerful. So what is it exactly is your role as a communications associate at the Marshall Project? What's your role there?
Well, it's my job to kind of like to bring the Marshall Project work to various audiences that haven't been aware of the work that we've done for many years.
Okay.
And like me being on this show, your audience probably don't know who the Marshall Project is, or hopefully they do.
Gotcha.
But there's different organizations or direct services organizations that deal with people of color who are primarily impacted by the criminal justice system, yet they have no idea of the work the Marshall Project does. And also, people who are impacted the most, in my eyes, are people who are incarcerated. They are in the system as we speak. Right. So I'm working on a newsletter called News Inside, which will be distributed throughout the prison systems throughout the entire country. And
that's a nice name.
Yeah,
News Inside. That's catchy.
That's right. That's
I like that. You thought of that?
Yeah, I did. I don't want to talk about myself. I did. I had a little help. I had a lot of help, but
it's a group effort.
It's a group effort.
Right.
That's what it is. Love is love.
Right.
I'm a team player.
No doubt. News Inside, right? So it gives you the news of what's going on inside, behind the walls.
No, actually, it's giving those behind the walls. The news is going on about the criminal justice system.
Gotcha.
Because those individuals are closed off from society.
Gotcha.
They don't have some of them don't have radios. Some of them don't have access to TV. If they do have access to TV, the channels are limited. Right. So, and the periodicals and books are limited.
Right.
The walls are not just meant to keep people in. It's meant to keep information out. It's meant to keep people out from bringing information in, or people from outside seeking information on what's going on in the inside.
That's heavy.
Yeah, so that's what it is. So in pushing this newsletter, the men and women will get a chance to be appraised of everything that's going on. Also, they get to use it in their college courses, because a lot of people nowadays, they're taking college courses while they're incarcerated, and they have to rely on dated textbooks or dated articles or dated computer software that's not, because they can't have the internet. So this newsletter will give them up-to-date articles that not only relate to their coursework, but it also has heavy impact on their lives.
Yeah, and it's also, some of this information can be related to their case too.
Definitely.
So they can find out something about their case.
Definitely.
And then be like, oh wow, wait a minute, I may have a shot at getting out earlier, especially with some of the laws that's being passed. Because I don't want to detour too far, but Governor Cuomo is looking to legitimize marijuana in the state of New York, because he sees that $1.3 billion in taxes per year can be gained off of taxing marijuana. And he's like, well, wait a second. Do you know what I could do in this state with $1.3 billion? So now they're looking to legitimize marijuana in the state of New York. And then as a result of doing that, there will be, and I don't know, and maybe you can kind of help me with this, I'm hearing that possibly there's people whose sentences, they will get time served, or they will get a reduction in their sentence based on that law passing.
Yeah, I heard about it on the news today, and I've been hearing rumblings of it for the past couple of months. Individuals who aren't incarcerated, who have blemishes on their record, they get those blemishes overturned, because a lot of those individuals who have those records, they don't qualify for certain professional licenses that'll preclude them for aiding gaining some gainful employment.
Right.
So if you get those off your record, then you can work, you can take care of your family.
Right.
But there's skeptics as well,
Mhm.
and the skeptics would say that when everything is hammered out, will it be baked into the law that allow people who are affected by these marijuana arrests to also be able to gain licenses to grow and sell marijuana? Or will it just be individuals who have money, just be individuals who are not in communities of color, so they can gain money and own their businesses off of the new passing of this law?
Right. So there's gonna be there's gonna be a bunch of angles to this, right? And we're in a capitalistic society, and so there might be where we see that there's justice, there's also a flavor of injustice somewhere there, right? So, we got to kind of watch that and be ever vigilant and be on the front lines. So let me ask you, what is the First Step Act about? Explain it to me.
Oh, it's about many things. The biggest standout is it's like an escape valve for judges for these mandatory minimum sentences. In the statute, the judge say if you commit a crime, you are to get this amount of time. And the judge may not believe that a person deserves this kind of time, and then can say, all right, I will want to give you a shorter sentence, but I just can't. So it gives the judges a flexibility to do that. But there's also it was a bill passed in 2010 that allowed individuals who were from 2010 on convicted of nonviolent crimes, which are drug offenses, to not be subjected to those harsh sentences anymore. But the problem with that bill is that turned into law. The problem with that is that it wasn't retroactive. By being retroactive means that it not only affects the people who get arrested day after the bill was enacted, it would affect those who are currently incarcerated for 10, 20, and 30 years, Right. So as it stands, there's people who get arrested for a particular crime and then get a minimum amount of time in comparison to what it was before. But then there's someone who locked up for 20 years and like, damn, man, I could have been out 15 years ago.
Right.
So this First Step Act allows it to become retroactive, and it make potentially 2,600 people eligible for release.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
In the federal system, it's a decent amount.
Yeah.
But those people will have to go to hearings and prove that why they fall under this category, and they can get some relief that way.
So now, this First Step Act only affects federal prisons. It doesn't have anything to do with the state prisons.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with the state prisons. The federal system is comprised of a little bit over 180,000 incarcerated individuals
Across the country.
It affects some of those people.
How many people are in prison? Isn't it like 3 million people in prison?
It's about 2.3 million people.
Goodness gracious.
So this will affect about 10% of those people roughly.
So why is this such a big deal? Because it's the first step?
It's such a big...
Are they playing chess? Is it like they're playing chess, like if we could get this passed, possibly we could get around to getting it on a state level? Or what do you think?
Partially, that's what people think.
I want to be optimistic.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can state what it is.
Okay.
People are optimistic now, or people are excited about this, I should say, because this is one of the first times a bill, like a prison reform bill, has bipartisan support at such a vast level that it does now.
Right.
You have a president who's talking about building a wall.
Right.
A president who's saying that immigrants are the one committing all these crimes.
Right.
But then there's a report done by Marshall Project reporter named Anna Flagg that dispelled that. She's a data reporter that laid all the data out in the article and dispelled that myth. But then you have a president who has support from people who want to build a wall. If you don't know, there's a GoFundMe out right now. We the People Will Fund the Wall, I believe that's what it is. And in the last couple of days, they raised $4 million.
Wow.
To build a wall, you know. So this is the ilk in which the president's supporters come from.
Yeah, it's identity politics.
Right. So have people like the president and his son-in-law Jared Kushner to support a bill like that, it seems to be a 180 from his policies. It seems to be a 180 from the things that he says. So when you have a 180 like that, and you have a guy like Mitch McConnell, who is a majority leader, finally support the bill like this, and he was one of the staunch advocates against it.
Yes.
Then that kind of raises eyebrows throughout the country, because the federal government takes the lead and the states usually follow. They don't have to, but they usually follow. So it sends a message.
Right.
So that can send a message that can resonate across the states.
Right. And it kind of, what it did for me was it kind of, when I saw the people that was behind it and supporting it, I said, okay, what's the long game here? What are you guys really up to? You know, like, what is this really, really about? But at the same time, it costs a lot of money to house inmates. It costs a lot. It's really, it's a drain on the economy to, you know, take care of inmates, their medical, and everything else, when you can actually, there's a more productive way to, first of all, people are being sentenced too long, but then second, there's a more productive way to actually rehabilitate or play a part in someone. It's supposed to be a correctional facility, play a part in the correction of someone's, you know, mental, physical, and spiritual state. Because just putting somebody in suspended animation behind a prison wall doesn't necessarily change the person, right? And so, yes, some individuals take it upon themselves and say, hey, I'm going to better myself. But other people, it makes them worse people than when they went in there. And so there has to be a more, and there is a more, and I was watching something the other day, I think it was San Francisco, where they have this kind of like alternative to going to jail. And then what the guys do is they go to a program and they learn a trade, right? And then they get the resources and the tools they need to survive in the world. And the recidivism rate is really low, because at the end of the day, a lot of people who are in prison are in there because of drug and alcohol problems. There's a lot of dudes that did things under the influence. There was dudes that was smoked out. There was dudes that was drinking. There's people who, you know, when they did the act of what they did, was under the influence of something. So it's to me, it's deeper than just locking somebody up. And then is the taxpayers' money, the taxpayers' money they pay for these prisons, right? The salaries and the house the people.
Yes.
Yeah. So a reallocation of vital resources is really important. Let me ask you this. So the first step, and then you sent me something earlier about like what's next, right? Okay, this is a first step. What would be next, and what do you think are some of the next steps that need to be taken to actually have a positive impact on criminal justice reform in this country?
Well, the next step, one of the things that many people are clamoring for clemency boards. There are people who, let's say for instance, in Pennsylvania right now, there are individuals who are incarcerated. Now this is in the state system, so I'm going out just to give you an example. People are incarcerated for being accompany an individual who commits a violent crime that happens to be a murder, and that person can get life without parole. Now, those individuals are incarcerated for 20 and 30 years, and they were just there. But there's people are clamoring for them to have a review after about 15 years in, to look at the character of the individual and say, does this person pose a threat to society? Does this person still needs to be continuously incarcerated?
Right.
What are you doing? Are you serving the state by keeping this person incarcerated? And if
Gotcha.
the person shouldn't be, then the person needs to be let go. Well, the same principle goes for clemency. In many states, clemency, you can apply for clemency once a person has at least half of his or her sentence in. And in the federal level, it'll be much of the same. But if right now, it lies in the president's hand on whether he issues clemency or not. He has an attorney that looks over these cases. You have to pass certain stages before it goes to him. But this attorney's office is inside of the Department of Justice office where the prosecutors are. So if you're looking at clemency applications in the same building in which the prosecutor's office are, who inherently their job is to prosecute individuals, how many people will actually get to the level where the president will look at this person and say, all right, this person can have clemency.
Right, they wouldn't get through the chain.
Won't get through the chain. So people want a clemency board or a commission of individuals separate from there in a separate building that will assess each clemency application and take some of the burden off of the president, and then say, all right, this person is up for clemency, and maybe this person didn't get it. So there's other states that do it, which brings me to your question you asked earlier, is why is this First Step Act so much of a big deal? Well, I was saying that it kind of sets the tone for other states, but I don't want you to mistake what I'm saying. If the First Step Act was a first step, the states have already taken like 5 and 6 steps in the whole. They're way ahead of the federal government when it comes to prison reform.
Really?
Yeah, some states have clemency boards.
Already?
Already.
Okay.
Some states don't over incarcerate or over sentence.
Okay.
Some states don't have these mandatory minimums that have
That was
this
my question. I was
disparity
just about
between
to ask you about mandatory minimums.
between crack and cocaine, because you can have the same amount of cocaine, you have the same amount of crack, and the person who was caught selling the crack will get more time than the person had the powder cocaine. And there's a racial disparity there because people of color usually be found with crack, and people that are white will have the cocaine.
Right,
So,
I'm going to read something real quick. It says the Congressional Office estimated that about 2,000 additional people each year would be eligible for exemption from mandatory sentences. The federal 3 strikes rule, which prescribes a life sentence for 3 or more convictions that include serious violent felonies of drug trafficking, will instead trigger a 25-year sentence. Serious drug felonies that now result in automatic 20-year minimum sentences will be reduced to 15 years. An automatic trigger that adds 25 years if a defendant, all this time is like blowing my mind. If a defendant was convicted of 2 or more violent or drug trafficking while holding a gun, so I guess they differentiate if you're selling drugs without a weapon or would now apply only to people with prior records of similar offenses. The shortened mandatory sentences will not apply retroactively, which was a sticking point for some law enforcement groups endorsing the First Step Act. Those groups were crucial to winning Trump's support. So it kind of ties in. So he's influenced. So this is also influenced, and this is from the Marshall Project that I read.
Justin George wrote that.
Yeah, so this is also influenced by the people who are backing him. But do you think this is really is this really helping, or is this just still the first step?
Well, it's a first step. There are people that are incarcerated that say, well, at least I'm getting something. A person doing 20 years, if that person can do 15 years, that person's like, all right, cool. I'll take it. It's better than nothing.
It's better than nothing.
but there are reformists that say that the government didn't go far enough. But then there's other people that say the title of the bill is a first step act. It's a first step.
Take what you can get.
You know, take what you can get, or this is a step towards reform. There's abolitionists that don't want people incarcerated at all. But there's abolitionists / reformists says you got to take one step at a time before you decarcerate.
Gotcha. They're talking about, so also in here it's saying, enforcing existing rules that are already there. Is there, so there's rules that aren't being enforced that are already there that, these prisoners have things that they're entitled to? Talk to me about that.
Well, the Bureau of Prisons, they're basically they're not enforcing the rules. That's what they're stating. There's individuals that could be eligible to go to halfway houses, could earn up to 54 days off their sentence and go to a halfway house in which they, imagine a person being incarcerated for 20 and 30 years who haven't seen a cell phone in his or her life and just be thrown out there and have to use a cell phone. I know, I've been there. It's kind of hard getting to handle those things. Or a person have to call an Uber, or a person will have to buy something or sign up for something online, and you have to put in a password and remember your password and log in. It can be crazy.
I remember that night. I remember that day. We was looking, he was looking at the phone, and everybody was sitting there trying to show you the phone, and you was like, "Oh, okay." You was like, "Yeah, wow." I mean, what was that really like for you? I mean, because we didn't have cell phones. There wasn't no computers and stuff. I don't remember. I remember me and you playing video games, but that was the extent of our computer interaction. There wasn't the web when you left. All that stuff came after. What was that like for you, coming from where you were to now having this brilliant device in your hand? What was that like?
Well, I had heard what I was getting into, so and I kind of made it a point in my mind not to be daunted by it.
Right.
But it's easier said than done. So coming out,
because you got the world in your hand.
You got the world in your hand, but it was valuable. It's valuable having the world in your hand.
Yeah.
It's like a tool that you can use so many ways.
Oh.
But in learning these tools, I mean, it wasn't so much just the phone itself that was frustrating, but it's the signing up with emails and having an email and remembering the email right and the password and putting all your information in just to get an app downloaded, and you have to remember it, and you want to store it somewhere, somebody can steal it. Well, somebody can steal it, what's going to happen? They're going to have my identity. Not knowing all those variables and what they really mean in actual life, though that can be frustrating and stressed out. So you want to do everything right, making mistakes every step of the way, and then watching people who are out here who've been doing that their whole lives, and it's so seamlessly easy to them, even though I knew that, I haven't been around it, but part of me, my ego was like, damn, what's wrong with me? Well, I can't get this like that. So it spurred me on to do it even more, but at the same time, I'm feeling less adequate than the person next to me, and that can be...
And now you showing me stuff. yo, I'm seeing you this doc and what I want you to do, and I'm like, oh yeah, oh okay, all right. Yo, fill your names in, and the people from the this and have them fill it in. I'm like, oh okay, thank you for telling me about this. But
that's what it is. But I don't want to get away from the point in which with going in the halfway house and people getting time reduced off their sentences, and the individuals who can, like the Bureau of Prison was enforcing these, was allowing these people to get these earned time credits and allow them to earn their way to halfway house like it seems like they were supposed to. And these individuals could learn the cell phone quicker. They could be in a sort of in between place where they can train until they can seamlessly assimilate into society without being daunted by because there's some people that they get frustrated and put it down. And some people that get blocked off from getting jobs because of it.
They get
some
thrown right
out there. They get antisocial. They start closing off, and people think something is wrong with them, but they just too proud. The teachers have to teach a person how to drive a car.
Yes.
Teachers have to teach a person how to fill out applications, get an ID, get a social security card.
Yeah.
So you have to have a certain level of patience with people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people can feel when a person is impatient, and they close them off and it causes them to quit.
Right.
So if you have this halfway house or this kind of home confinement area where people can do that, instead of just being inside of the prison with bars, you know what I mean, it'd be helpful for them going forward.
You know what? That's a good point what you said, because somebody's that's coming out of prison and could possibly have trust issues on a lot of different levels.
Right.
You're coming from an environment where you can't necessarily trust everybody.
Right.
You got to kind of find your select few, your niche, with your peeps, right? And then, but even before you went to prison, part of the reasons of the issues of the things that got you to prison, you could be from a broken home. You could have been molested. Guys get molested. I don't know if people think it just happens to women.
Right.
Guys get molested, and a lot of people, not a lot of people, because I don't know the percentage, but I've known brothers that was very violent. Just to find out, when we got older, he was raped by their uncle and stepfather and different stuff, and that's why they were so ready to do something to somebody else, right? And so you go in, maybe not necessarily while you were away for 10, 15, 20 years. You might have not necessarily got a chance to resolve some of those issues of the things that led you there in the first place. And so now you come back out, and then you just get thrown back. Sometimes in the families, sometimes some of the things that's going on in the whole family dynamic is still there.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure, I never did any time like that, but just coming back around people, you have to kind of redefine yourself and get your identity, and that would be perfect to allow somebody time to just assimilate socially, emotionally, mentally and spiritually back out here, because it's a lot. It's a lot going on out here. It's not easy out here.
Right.
It's not easy. When I walk out of this studio, in me, there's about 6 people in there, and guess what? Everybody, I have a different relationship with everybody, and everybody has different wants and needs of what they want from me, what they might expect from me, what they might expect of me, and I gotta live up to that every day.
Right.
It's really, so you coming out of prison, you might have not necessarily had that. Like, look at you, you got a wife and kids. That's a hell of a responsibility. That's no joke day in and day out. Why? Because your kids have wants and needs, and then they have obstacles and challenges that they're navigating through in the newness of their life. They go from being 6 to 7. They go from being 7 years old to 8 years old. They never been 8 years old. You got to help them at 8 years old navigate through a phase of life they've never been in before.
Facts.
And so some of these guys, they come home to families. They got kids, and
right.
And then you just get sent. And so it's a lot, man. And not everybody, not everybody has a warm environment to necessarily come back to. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna take a quick break, real quick, and then we're gonna get back to the interview. We're gonna come back with conversations with Malik and Lawrence Bartley. We'll be right back. Okay, we back with conversations with Malik, and I'm sitting here, Lawrence Bartley, the Marshall Project, and we're talking criminal justice reform. And as we close out the interview, so what are some of the things that you guys are doing to impact change on the that you have coming up on this whole criminal justice reform issue?
Well, for one, we're keeping the country abreast of everything that's going on with the First Step Act. That doesn't take a position. We're giving it the raw facts.
Gotcha.
And we always try to report in ways that other organizations aren't reporting. As an example of it, we just did a story of sex offenders in Florida who commit crimes against women, children, what have you. There is laws in place in which they can't be near schools, they can't be near certain locations. But those laws place these individuals with no place to live. And a lot of them were living in this street, like under tents. But then there was another law that came into play saying that they had to move, so officers would move them out. And then being that they moved from this point, they can't go to this other area because the law in place said they can't go there. So they were just running like every night away from the police, just from going. Imagine living like that from years to years. And there's one individual who had relations with a girl that was younger than him when he was 18 years old. And now 30-something years, he's in the street living like that. So, a lot of people aren't sympathetic to sex offenders. But to put that story out there, it caused people to see their living conditions from a human sense in a different way and think about, what if some of those individuals change? What if they aren't changed? Is that what we want? Is that criminal justice? Those are things to think about. Those are deep topics that the Marshall Project puts out there and gives it to the communities to consume and make a decision either way.
It's amazing you said that, because I got an alert, because I own a school that has children, and so I get an alert of the sex offenders in the area. And it was amazing because one day when I was looking at it, this was a couple of months ago, and I was like, okay, so these are the people in the area that are registered sex offenders. And I said, well, what does that mean that they're a sex offender? Because I always so a spiritual mentor of mine, he said, Malik, if you can have one thought, it's possible that you can have another. If you can have a thought, it's possible that you could just have another thought. And so I had another thought, right? My one thought was, oh, that's a sex offender. We need to watch out. I need to make sure that everybody's looking out for this individual. But then I just had another thought. And the other thought was, how do you know this is a bad person? He's done his time, obviously. How do you know the nature of his sexual offense? It could have been that he slept with somebody who he thought was old. That wasn't the age that, and then statutory rape is statutory rape, and you have to be registered as a sex offender. Oh, I thought she was older. Oh, well, you thought wrong, but you still charged. It doesn't mean, so when you think, at first when I think of sex offender, my first thought is somebody that has raped many women, or somebody that has preyed on children, like little children. And the title sex offender could be broad ranged, right? It could be broad ranged. And so, yeah, they can't live close to, so then I was also like, well, if they can't live close to a school, a recreation center,
parks.
So then I'm like, well, where are they supposed to live? Because in every community, there's schools, recreation centers, parks, and whatever else is on the list. I thought about that. I said, so where are they supposed to live? So that's really deep.
And when are they done paying for their crimes?
And then when does that end? That was my other thing. So when does you being a registered sex offender, when does that like...
A person who's a registered sex offender, they're a registered sex offender for life.
I don't mean to be laughing, but I'm laughing because it's so ridiculous. Like, so even when you're 65, 70, and you're like grandpa, and you decide, hey, I want to be in the grandkids, you know, wife, we want to move to another state, oh, I got to register as a sex offender.
Yeah.
Really?
Wow.
Well, those are the type of stories that we try to bring out. And I want to highlight another example of a story we did. It was a story about crime victims boards. Crime victims, there's these crime victim units that do good work in each state. And one of the things they do is if a person is a victim of a violent crime and the families are poor or otherwise, this crime victim unit, what they do is they collect money from people that are incarcerated. Once they get found guilty, they collect a certain portion of money from them. And then it goes inside this bank. And they use that bank in order to pay for the funerals of a person who was a victim of violent crime throughout the country. But we found that there was this one particular state, there's a few states across the board that have rules in place that if the victim was a perpetrator of a crime somewhere in his or her life, then that person is not eligible to any money from the Crime Victim Board if that person get killed in a violent crime. And it was one story was a man who was about 18 years old. He committed a crime, and he was like he got killed at like 60 something years old in a violent crime. And throughout his life, after he did his time, went home, he raised his son, put his son through college. But his son didn't have enough money to bury his dad. But because of that rule in place, the son wasn't allotted the money that the board would give to someone else. So it was discriminated against individuals who committed crimes. And then we also found that those people who were denied were mostly people of color. You know, so those are like kind of stories that we bring out there that people are not covering. And we plan to do some more of that in 2019 and beyond.
Let me ask you this. I was thinking to ask you this, like some of these stories, you have to get some of these stories by going into prison as well, right? Like for instance, would you may have to speak to some of the inmates in the prison to get some of their stories to kind of figure out how to report this, you know, with this news.
Well, some issues we go into prisons throughout the whole country. We're a national news organization. We do stories in Ohio, Florida. All these stories I mentioned were in different states. There's New York stories too that I haven't mentioned. But my point is, we access records. We do FOIA on the state level. The Freedom of Information Act. We could get records on not on the state level, on the federal level. Sorry. On the state level in New York, we have FOIA, Freedom of Information Law, that we could just kind of write and get these records and assess them and do reports based on them. And but as far as stories from individuals in prison, every Friday we publish stories called Life Inside. And Life Inside are stories or personal essays done by someone that's been impacted by the criminal justice system. In fact, that's how I started working for the Marshall Project. Because for those who don't know, I was incarcerated at the age of 17, and I did 27 years and 2 months. And during my last year of incarceration, when I was going to parole board, I wrote a Life Inside essay, and it got published by the Marshall Project. I didn't know at that time I would be released and work for the Marshall Project, but that's how it happened. But my point is, throughout the country, there's many people that submit essays about their stories, and we publish them on Fridays, and we publish them with BuzzFeed now. You know, with some of them we publish with BuzzFeed, and some of them we put it on our site. But it's a way to kind of hear the thoughts of someone that's inside firsthand, as opposed to hearing it from someone else, as opposed to hearing it being filtered by the prison administrators. You're hearing it firsthand, and there's no rawer than that. And there's some beautiful essays that come out of there, some beautiful, life-touching stories. And I want to say also that I don't want to paint the picture that everyone incarcerated are victims.
Gotcha.
Because there's some people incarcerated for things that they didn't do, they are victims. I could talk about John Adrian Velasquez in New York, same way he incarcerated something he didn't do.
Gotcha.
But there are people who are incarcerated not for singing too loud in church.
Gotcha.
They did something to get there.
No doubt.
So, but at some point, you know, people may have done their time and want to move on.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the stories we highlight here.
Gotcha.
You know, and so I just want to kind of put that out there so people can understand. You know, not to discount what victims of crimes go through.
Right.
Not to say that people incarcerated should be, you know what I mean, pampered and tended to, and victim crime should be forgotten about, because that's not what this is about.
Gotcha.
We just stating the facts. And when we talking about the First Step Act, that's for people who haven't committed violent crimes. They need to include violent crimes, but primarily those revisions, those measures are for people who committed drug crimes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yo, well, listen. You know, this has been very helpful and insightful. For people who want more information, please check out the Marshall Project. I've been reading ever since you sent me some of the links. There's a lot of informative things in there.
A whole lot.
I mean, a lot of it. I found myself reading. I had a lot to do today, so that's going to be part of my reading, because I want to. Information is power. Knowledge is key, right? And knowledge is the first step act to acting your way into a new life. So we get armed with information, and then we take action based on the information that we receive. And that's what we're doing here. We're sitting here with Lawrence Bartley, and listen, we gave you some valuable information. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again. And listen, it's been another great episode with Conversations with Malik. Thanks for coming on. You enlightened me to a lot, man.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
You know, and thank you for having me. And if you want to, like you said, our work, you can find our work on www.themarshallproject.org.
Mm-hmm. Listen, and check them out, and we're gonna be on the front lines of this, and hopefully there'll be some change for the better to affect a lot of people's lives, man, and we can really do away with 2.3 million people incarcerated. I saw something somewhere that there's more people incarcerated now than was in chattel slavery in 1850s, something like that.
That's a fact.
That blew my mind. So, you know, we want to make those changes, man. And listen, stay active, stay positive. Conversations with Malik loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Peace.